All right, 7th hour, Thursday, Writers Week. How are we feeling today? Ooh, one of those. All right, we're good, right? We're just a little sad that there's only one more day of Writers Week after this is why we're a little, I know, boo, Writers Week has to end, boo. Should be Writers Weeks, that would be amazing. Okay. First of all, a few thanks. Thank you to the boosters. The boosters are very generously supporting Writers Week. Without them, we couldn't be able to do what we do. And a lot of you have parents who are boosters, so please go home and say thank you from us for allowing us to do this. If your parents aren't boosters and you want to encourage them to do that and support Writers Week, we would be very appreciative. Thank you to our administrative team who allows this to happen. Thank you to the tech crew up there who's been working their tails off every single period, every single day to make sure this is happening. And thank you to the English teachers in the room who are super generous and thoughtful and make every day a little bit better for you and for me. And thank all of you. I thank you. This week has been so fun. The questions that you've been asking have been thoughtful and introspective and important, and we appreciate how you're engaging with everything that's going on up on stage here. So, without further ado, this person to my left and we graduated together from Fremd High School many moons ago. So a Fremd graduate. She's an educator, a Postcard Prize-winning poet. She is a poet in residence with the Chicago Poetry Center. She is an organizer with the Mini Wachoni Nakichizi Waunspa at Standing Rock Reservation. Her first book, which you'll be reading from today, called Something Small of How to See a River, is forthcoming from Tupelo Press. She got some prizes from the Academy of American Poets, is the winner of the 2018 Auburn Witness Prize, 2020 Palette Poetry Prize. She's fantastic, and we're excited to have her here. Please help us welcome Theresa Segwits.
Hi, it's the best, coolest thing ever for me to be here, let me say. I loved Writers Week when I was in high school so much. I was always, sneaking out of physics and coming here, and it really meant a lot to me. It was such an important part of me becoming a poet, so being able to read here is like dream right now. I want to say a giant thank you to Mr. Anderson for inviting me, to the other Mr. Anderson, to Ms. Burdick, to Mr. Henry, to Mr. Sampson, Ms. Mungai, to all the wonderful teachers who supported me when I was in high school, because I would not be a poet today if it weren't for all of them. So I just appreciate you all so much love for you. This is me when I was in high school. If you didn't guess, this is the singular photo I was able to find of myself in high school because I just moved. So that's me. One thing I wanted to tell you about Writers Week also, though, is that I never read. When I was in high school, I was super shy about my work. I felt super vulnerable to share it. I was kind of sneaky with it, so I was super lucky to have such amazing teachers who supported me anyway. But I want to say a huge kudos to those of you who have been reading, who have shared, who have presented. You're so brave and amazing, and it's been such a gift to get to hear your work today. And I also want to say that if you don't read at Writers Week, or it's okay to also sometimes not feel like a writer, but keep writing, and if writing is something that gives something to you, I know for myself, I don't know how I think or feel until I write about it, please keep doing it. You're a writer because you write. That's what makes you a writer. So I'm just, again, thrilled to be here with all of you. I'm going to be reading today from my first book, which is coming out in 2023. It's called Something Small of How to See a River. And so this book talks about the No Dapple water protector movement on Standing Rock against the Dakota Access Pipeline. This was in 2016, so you all were younger. Does anyone kind of remember that? Does anyone remember seeing anything on the news about that or anything? A couple of us? All right, a few people. So what happened was at Standing Rock, there is this big oil pipeline called the Dakota Access Pipeline. And it was supposed to go through a white area of the state of, predominantly white area of the state of North Dakota. People in that town got angry about it, petitioned, and it was rerouted to go right above Standing Rock Reservation, which is, it is Lakota, that's the indigenous people who live there. It's Lakota territory. It was never ceded in treaties. So it was to go through the Lakota territory and under the Missouri River, which is a sacred river, under the Missouri River, which is both sacred to people and also the water source for most of the indigenous people in the Dakotas and also for a lot of other people. I was living in St. Louis at the time, and it's also the water source for St. Louis. So I went up there and was invited by my friend, Elena Eagleshield, to, that's Elena in the middle, you'll hear about her in the poems, to join her. She was starting a school for the kids at the camp, the kids and families who were at the camp. The camp was giant, you all. At some points, it was up to 10,000 people. So this was a piece of land that had no existing infrastructure at all. And 10,000 people just came there and made a community. People started this work in about April of 2016. I got there in August. And at that point, there was so much happening. There were food kitchens that were feeding everybody every day. There was a garbage system and porta potties that were being cleaned and, just events happening every day and things happening and people really, 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 really taking care of each other. Everybody at the camp had a job, had a way that they took care of everyone else. So in writing this book, I worked really hard to include other people in it, but it ultimately is, of course, just my little corner of this story of being at the camp. I wrote poems collaboratively with friends. Some of the students who were there contributed quotes and things that are interspersed throughout the book. So I tried really hard to make this a somewhat collaborative process, but also, again, knowing that it's just my small corner of this. And I want to acknowledge that there's really a tension in that because I, of course, am a white woman writing about a big indigenous movement. So before I start reading the poems, I do want to say, I want to acknowledge we are on indigenous land. We're always on indigenous land. Chicago, because of the rivers, is such an important place for many different people, so I'm going to list some, but Winnebago, Ho-Chunk, Oto, Missouri, Iowas, Menominee, Meshakwi, Sauk, Miami, Yangshaw, Kickapoo, Illini, Anishinabeg, Ottawa, and Potawatomi, right? This is the ancestral sacred home for a lot of different people. One really easy thing that we can all do is to read Indigenous writers. I listed a bunch of Indigenous poets because I'm a poet. This is a really inexhaustive list. This is just the people I thought of off the top of my head in about 5 minutes. You can research more, but these are some amazing Indigenous poets who I love. And the last thing I want to highlight here on the bottom is that if you're interested in learning more about Standing Rock, I really never want to be the only writer that people read about Standing Rock. A magazine called Orion Magazine had an amazing feature called Women of Standing Rock with beautiful photographs, with poems by Indigenous poets. So I super, super, super strongly recommend you check that out. I think it's really beautiful. All right, here is one picture from the school. The teepee was our classroom for the first couple months. And on that note, I'm going to start reading. My first poem is called Tonight I Haven't Even Said the Word Pipeline. As you'll hear in the poems, throughout the movement, there became a lot of police violence, right? There was a lot of police violence. Things got very, 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 very hard. At the beginning, though, it was really beautiful. It was just the most beautiful place I'd ever been. And as a poet, I think that, I feel a big amount of responsibility to also show that joy and that beauty that isn't always a part of the story that gets told. Tonight, I haven't even said the word pipeline. I peel the tape off these boxes with Elena, open their mouths that sing with gifts of seed beads, neon scissors, fat-shimmered spools of sinew. We garland this torn army tent with August corn, say school, but mean river, milkweed, clay. We say everything is beginning to arrive. Since the suspension of construction for me, there is only this tent flap lifting. The kids' hands, plate filled, small suns of yellow squash. The ridge where we carry our dinner, new power streaming from the solar panels, swelling the sound of the round dance. And see, elders sipping soup, toddlers wobbly with lightsabers, gift of sage scenting their t-shirts. Before we have to talk about tear gas and torn down homes, give me this moment again. The rippling circles of tents like jewel-toned fish, votives of teepees flickering across the prairie. Someone says, look, and we turn now toward the bright kernels of stars spread along the tarp of the sky. Follow my eyes and see there, tipping green the poles of the teepees, drenching the night in fuchsia scarves, peeling and curling like birch bark from the Milky Way, the northern lights. And in this second of hushed and held breath, there's so much I don't know about the solar winds, disturbances storming beneath all of this beauty. But maybe this is the most human thing we can do. Look upward, together, as the light changes from green to pink, the aurora ringing all these colors from the dark. This next poem is called Learning the Plum Pit Game. And so one thing I really like about poems is I don't particularly enjoy following rules. I like figuring out new ways to write. I like that poems give you so much room to do whatever it is you need to do to make the poem work. And so this poem is written in the form of directions for a traditional Lakota game played with little wild plumpets, which are really tiny. There's a lot of names of plants in this one, so if there's a word you don't recognize, it's probably the name of a kind of grass, a kind of prairie grass. Learning the plum pit game. 1, you don't know the rules yet. Sit with the kids in this circle of grass. Listen. You see the smooth brome and want to say untouched or soft as a child's head in your lap? Don't. Even grasses have a history you don't understand. 2, you have a partner in an opposing team. Take 5 plum pits, painted on one side, some with the tiniest buffalo, others with the winging of birds. These stalks planted here as forage for cattle who were planted in place of buffalo when they were turned to bleached planets of skull. 3, your turn. Hold these plum pits in the palm of your hand. Shake them like dice. Feel the hoof trying to escape the beak. Roots of native grass hold carbon in crenellated shapes 14 feet underground. We are held here by castles. 4, flick your wrist, open your palm. The kids chant, Tatanka, 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 or Zintkala, Zintkala. And in the hills beyond here, a bulldozer turns the lands like the tossed dreams of fever. And the gases rise like ghosts of the blue stem, the false bone set. Well, 5, you count your matches and mark your points. And you are suspended in the palm of the prairie. 6, the amber wings of the Dakota skipper begin to disappear. This next poem is called Postcard from Standing Rock. This is a poem to my husband, who was remarkably patient with the fact that I went to go live outside without internet or much phone access, several states away from him, and stayed for 4.5 months. He was also involved in ways, he's a lawyer, but this is a poem for him. Again, this is another one where I played with form. So this poem is a mirror. So the lines that you hear in the first half all are repeated back in the second half after a turn. Postcard from Standing Rock. I wish you were here. I know every day I was supposed to leave yesterday. Pack up the hollow bones of the tent. Stop feeling each night like a stowaway in the sway of the grass. But you know how I love this work. The tiny snapping turtles in the river, the wild plums tart on my tongue. My days full with kids weaving drums, the bright sinew holding everything together. You're already back in Missouri, keeping lit our garage sale lamps, when, after school, Val and Elena surprised me with a camper. Home sweet home sign hung on the door. And the deep blue curtains Val stitched just for me, with strawberry Pop-Tarts in the cabinets, nestling in like honeysuckle nectar. And I know then I can stay, and I will, nestling in like honeysuckle nectar, with strawberry Pop-Tarts in the cabinets and the deep blue curtains Val stitched just for me, with the camper, home, sweet home sign hung on the door. When after school, Val and Elena surprised me, you were already back in Missouri, keeping lit our garage sale lamps, holding everything together. My days full with kids weaving drums, bright sinew, the wild plums tart on my tongue, this work, the tiny snapping turtles in the river. Know how I love you. But in the sway of the grass, I stop feeling each night like a stowaway, the hollow bones of the tent packed up yesterday. I was supposed to leave, I know. Every day, I wish you were here. Thank you. All right, this is a poem about at large events. Often children get separated from their parents, right? Like it happens at Disney, it happens everywhere. And so this is a poem about a time a 4-year-old girl got separated from her family. Everybody was looking, everyone was looking for her. Luckily, she was found and returned safely to her family. But one thing that this poem talks about, and you know, a reason there was a real electric fear in the camp at that time is because there's a really big endemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women in this country. Indigenous women are 10 times as likely as anyone else to be missing or murdered, and that's just reported statistics. So it's a thing that really touches a lot of people, and this poem references that. We don't know yet that the little girl is safe. Our flashlights weave a trembling net across the prairie, sway for hours like river grass underwater. She's 4, rumor says, last seen with 2 white men. We pass this panicked offering to one another like sharp crusts of bread, like sharp crusts of stale bread. Sometimes in the dark of a slope, our lights catch the ghosts of other missing girls from each nation whose flag flies above our hand-built home. They're lacing a child's shoe, or a needle and thread, finishing a poem, or a tattoo, an argument, or a college class, busy with everything uncompleted, the women who have not been found. We yell her name again, 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 each syllable pleading in our mouths like a luminescent shell. The echo catches in each teepee flap, clutches at each blade of grass. We snake our small lights between the ribs of horse trailers, through every ash and cottonwood copse. Every bed is left empty and rumpled, every sleeping bag splayed. Some of us begin to unzip each tent, and by the bank of the river, some kneel, shining what light they can toward the bottom. So I wanted to show you this next poem because this is, I wanted to show you what this poem looks like on the page, because throughout the book, one thing that I do is I take documents from the state of North Dakota. I take police documents, state documents, and I add things. I put new things in them. They're not necessarily trying to argue with the documents, although sometimes they do, but they're trying to tell a more full story. They're trying to tell the things that the state might miss. They're trying to tell some of the things that maybe only poetry can tell. I didn't invent doing anything like this. This is called documentary poetics. If you think this is interesting, one poet who does a really cool job of this, her name is Solmaz Sharif, and she has a book called Look. But what this poem is about a friend of mine, Red Fawn Fallis, who was at the camp and helped support the start of the school. She took me around. She knew a lot of people. She took me around to a lot of different families, and we would talk about the school and what was happening. And she was framed as having a gun on her. Someone planted this gun on her, and she was arrested and spent several years in prison. And so this is a poem for Red Fawn. The parts that are not in italics are the state document, and the parts that are in italics are my own words. Woman charged with attempted murder of law enforcement officer. Date, October 31st, 2016. Agency, Morton County. Mandan, North Dakota. The Morton County State's Attorney's Office charged 37-year-old Red Fawn Fallis, who called me chitty chatty bang bang as I trailed her camp to camp, who marched a waving rainbow of ribbon skirt through still tall grass, with attempted murder, Class A felony, preventing arrest, C felony, carrying a concealed weapon, a bag of flat-leaf cedar for ceremony in the band of her skirt. She held the resined needles between us, and they branched like capillaries, which is to say, like prayer. A misdemeanor, possession of marijuana. B misdemeanor, criminal conspiracy to commit endangering by fire. She offered tobacco, asked elders what they could teach. Beadwork, they said, hand drums, stories of Iktomi and the duck's red eyes. She wrote answers in her pencil's soft lead. C felony, maintaining a public nuisance. A misdemeanor, and engaging in a riot. B misdemeanor. In September, before the oil many spotlights, we were guided only by pollen-scattered stars. And red fawn, though the plains grew thigh-high and we worried for snakes, you led us, your strong boots bending the stems to bring us home. All right, so this next poem, so I'm realizing I don't have a lot of poems with what was happening with the police, but there was a lot happening with the police, a lot of raids. And so this next poem is also, again, like looking for a moment of joy. And it's talking about a time I tried to leave the camp to go do some work, to go get some internet, and the kids came and swarmed my car and took it over. But I wanted to show you at the beginning of the poem, I talk about a log where all the kids were playing. It's covered in graffiti. People wrote a lot of resistance things on it. And so this is me and the other teachers at the school attempting, as you can see, not particularly gracefully, to also play on the log. There are no police in this poem. Only the kids balancing in their snow boots, the log beneath them rainbowed in resistance slogans. Slush gray light interrupted by the bright flags of their arms. They waved down our car. Teachers, teachers. We unclick the loose doors, full weight of the kids on their handles. They fly open like the arms of startled infants. There are no police in this poem. Only Shawnee Ray, my foot as her springboard, vaulting to the council, asterisking my borrowed skirt with the juice of her gas station pickle. Only Shelby's hands, winging my books from the back seat, and Shaylina, who can't be bothered, wedging her knees into the narrow volumes of poetry, slick picture book covers. I'm saying, there are no police in this car, where Frankie lunges over everybody in her long black cape of a coat wrapped around baby Dylan, marshmallow manned in his snowsuit, fingers Sour Patch sticky. Somehow, suddenly, my hands, my feet are off the wheel, the pedal. I am ankle deep in the snow. All the teachers are, shivering spectators of this wild joy. And I can see it doesn't belong to me, but I can love it anyhow. There are no police anywhere. As Emma's elbow pokes the horn, beep, 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 jostling through the snow muffle of prairie as Raina and Nyla and RJ co-sardine the driver's seat, getaway curls smushed on the ceiling. There are no seats left in the car, so Michael and Layton scramble the windshield, sprawl on the roof. There are only the kids shouting the ecstatic tally of themselves. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 14 as they take this frame that looked so inflexible and there, make space for each of their bodies. All right, this one, you'll recognize some of the kids again. This one is called On Building a School. On Building a School. Shaylina, age 9, of hot pink coat and perfect scrambled eggs, presses her Velcroed boot against the wire of ice and barbs, opens the fence that keeps us from the river. She tells me what she heard about the sacred objects returned by the county after the raid. Hand-fringed hide of the chanupa bags, deer-given skin of the drums, stained yellow with the piss of police. I crawl through the passage, past the cottonwood, choking with leafless vine, the abandoned nest of the snow bunting, preserved in its sheath of ice. She speaks of these handmade objects, and I think of what we are trying to build. This idea we call a school. I think of a friend who said, Native tradition creates beauty in every object, a reminder to care for what you have. I've spent years with the disposable test booklets, the tiny eyes of each multiple choice, classrooms with 4 reliable walls. Years believing I could know what was best. Shailena, of 6 sisters, of telling adults to stop screaming about cops and scaring the kids, leads me down a sandy slope away from the road that spins with pickup trucks packed with lumber, ladders, tent poles, these fragments that will rebuild the homes that were taken last week, rebuild homes we all know may be taken again. We dip to a slim cuticle of a bank, frozen, freckled today with trash. Months ago, the kids built a ramshackle bridge here, the driftwood glistening jade with algae, the splintering damp in the sun. They climbed to the edge, unbothered that the bridge reached no certain bank, scrambled on scraped knees and hands, and trusted the rotting of the wood, or maybe trusted even the fall. The first time somebody mentioned staying the winter among the horse games and giveaways of August, I laughed. The story of my skin made me believe we'd win history quickly. Go home. How will I know how to name this for myself, for the kids, if we fail? Shailena digs in the cold sand, unearths a Skittles wrapper, the rainbow mud fossiled into brittle bird. I am about to warn her to stay away from the water's cold edge when she slips the trash gently into my hand, says, "Sha." Next, hands me a crinkled Lay's bag, "Ji." A ramen wrapper, "Sha ji." She hands me each Lakota color, picks up each piece one by one, as if we'd never heard the ambulances screech from the road, as if the helicopters didn't scar the air with their mosquito song. She names each item as if there was no other sound in the world for what we held in our hands. All right, and I am going to read one more poem. This one's a longer poem. It's called Baking Bread as Ocheti Shakoi is Raided. So what happens now in the story and in the book is that the violence gets really intense. There start to be a lot of blizzards. A lot of people start to go home. We close up the school. I need to return to my home in St. Louis. My back is totally destroyed. I have to get surgery. I'm trying to kind of keep in contact with people the best that I can, help in any way I can, but I know that things are really, really hard there at the camp. And then finally, the police give a date and say, at this date, we're going to come and we're going to knock down everything. We're going to totally clear this piece of land. It didn't give people enough time to take things down, so a lot was destroyed. And there were, of course, also people who weren't going to leave until they were made to leave, who said, this is our land and we don't have to go. And so this poem is me watching that destruction of the camp via a live stream from St. Louis. And it was really hard to see it that way. It was really hard to see this place that had been a home for 5 months get torn apart like that. And I was baking bread at the time because I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know what to do with my body. I couldn't move very much. So this poem is called Baking Bread. Oh, and the camp was called Ocheti Shakoi Camp. Baking bread as Ocheti Shakoi is rated. 1. Nobody stands at Northgate anymore, where bulldozers lumber the slope, score the dirt with their teeth, scatter men who slash teepees in the wet earth where we once lived. Winona's kitchen, the tent where the kids donned rubber gloves, ladled soup into hundreds of bowls, crumples like a foal in the snow. The sheriff calls this victory. I am very happy to say we finally introduced rule of law in the Ocheti camp. And I am not there. I don't want to tell you this, but I am leaning against my stove in St. Louis, clutching my recipe's flimsy page written in black and white as the blurry window of my computer streams Ocheti in from my counter. I am just a woman whose back will not support her in a city that hides its water behind high voltage lines and highway, starburst windows of forgotten factories. The bulldozers power toward the cannonball river I slept beside, churn the earth and the roots of each plant as central heat pumps like an old heart through my house. 2, I used to trust in the words that were placed on my tongue. I called the river Missouri, but learned no language for the dams redirecting the water, holding back the stories of the silt and the clay. I never learned of the children who were taken from its side. I never learned why I was taught to sing, "This land is my land." 3, the county commissioner says he's proud. The camp was cleared without any major injuries, and I remove a glass measuring cup from my shelf. Travis's plywood home, where he practiced the songs he would sing with the kids, the home he built with his hands, spray painted, "We are unarmed," erupts into flames. I unfold the origami of the flower's silent mouth. The bulldozers turn and shred hay bales that kept our teepees warm in the wind, yank the foundation from Tonia's wigwam where Shailena and Shawnee last hugged me goodbye. The bag coughs flour like dandelion seed, and I cannot come clean of it, coating my fingers white, wedged white beneath the threads of my sweater, burrowed white in the split wood of my counter. On the screen, assault rifles push the last few people to the river. 4, some days I lean against my sink, feel the grinding in my spine, and I am ashamed to say that some small piece of me wishes I could close this window, simply follow the directions that have been written so clearly before me. Let my world be the chipped white of my cabinets, the shift of the pots and pans above my head. Forget I ever lived beside a river. But the Missouri and the Mississippi become one and reach me, even here, each time I turn on my tap. When the edges of the cannonball overflow, touch the places along the riverbank where we sought sticks for a drum and studied the plants and sat in circles and sang, the water runs here. Every day I brush my teeth with Ocheti. Every day I wash my clothes with Ocheti. Every day it is Ocheti that fills my glass. 5, On the feed, the soldiers are chasing Eric, who made tea for our coughs, dipping into jars of marshmallow root and ginger and osha. Once he measured herbs with the kids as I measure my water to the line, stir until strands of gluten begin to form. The camera bucks, and I see only a river of sky, and Eric is screaming. 6. The governor says he is glad the efforts have gone so smoothly, and one by one, each feed blinks out. What we built is now just mud and sleet, ash and firewood broken by bulldozer chains. Still, I see the sacred fire in the summer. Frankie braiding my hair in the food line, Wolf and Junior grass dancing in the firelight. I don't know when the pipeline will run beneath the river, when the water will brush its strange plastic tubes before it reaches our lips. I don't know if this bread will ever rise or when or where the first oil will leak. But I am learning something small of how to see a river, to see the drowning hidden beneath the water, and see also the kids on the bank, covered in temporary tattoos, hair spiked from days of swimming. They are praying for the construction workers. Help them understand their kids drink water too. Tobacco sprinkles from their fingers is taken in the breath of the current. Thank you. You were such a wonderful audience. So good to be here. Russ, do we have time for any questions? One question. We have time for one question. Oh, all right, awesome.
Have you been back to the area of the camp?
Yeah, yep. So actually, I'm going to turn to a nicer slide also. Yeah, I go back pretty regularly, less since COVID and trying to keep everybody safe. But I'm still involved in work. There is, the school is actually ongoing now for kids on Standing Rock to have cultural and environmental based school. So it's really awesome. They're doing incredible work, and yeah, I am still involved in it. All right. Thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate you. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you again to Fremd English Department.